morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is 44 degrees, sunny, and they're warning of 65-mile-an-hour gusts today here in upstate New York. So, where do we leave off on Monday? We titled the show Questioning Science, Distrust, Manipulation, and Tiny Robots. Gotta love tiny robots, except when they're nanobots in your blood, and that's what that was all about. Talked about a lot of things. Over the last week or so, we've dug again into smart dust and how far the technology has been coming recently. There are all kinds of new types of devices, little tiny smart motes with all kinds of technological wonders built into them. So not only can they sense the environment and be able to tell whether or not there's some sort of bioterror attack, or if you happen to have, oil and gas in a location to go mine. I think we found out the Hewlett-Packard version of smart dust that they are calling the central nervous system of Earth. They have launched in a project with Shell, the oil company, for oil and gas exploration. But we also found DARPA and the University of Berkeley, California, working with neural dust, they called it. And that would be smart dust that goes inside of you in order to be your next version of smart doctor, to be able to manipulate your nerve endings, zippity zap that vagus nerve, to be able to cure, they're hoping eventually, diseases. And that's where we have really kind of taken a left turn. You know, you can read every biotech story on this technology, and the majority of the time they're going to tell you how great it is. But we usually take a look at the dystopic side of the technology, being a lifelong lover and arm embracer of technology myself that helped bring in the age that we are in now. You know, I look back in horror as to what we've done, and that's why I can't help looking at the dark side of all this technology, because, of course, what this neural dust and smart dust and things of this nature, this being able to deploy, map, and control not only our environment, but all of nature and all of biology. I mean, that really is the end game here. It's going to put us into quite a pickle, especially when you have people like Ray Kurzweil and George Church and Tommy Insel all working on this stuff with very significant backing from federal entities, large venture capitalist firms funded by very rich tech billionaires. And they are all looking to remake life and to control it in their own definition of life. Now, we had this release that came yesterday out of WikiLeaks called Vault 7 that took a look at some of the horrifying things that technology has been enabling our alphabet agencies to do to us on a global scale. And, you know, here's a couple things. I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit today, and we're going to spin this into where we left off on Monday, talking about AI and some of the horrors we need to be aware of. But, you know, it was interesting that over the weekend, I believe it was on Saturday, Trump came out and did something that no sitting president had ever done before, and that was accused a former president of wiretapping without a warrant, potentially. Now, nobody has admitted that there was a warrant or there wasn't a warrant, but I saw something that Jay Carney, the former, I think he was press secretary or whatever, he's the dude that used to tell the reporters to go home. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's press secretary. Jay Carney was on some news show, and they had asked repeatedly, a number of times, whether or not there was any type of approved warrant, that he could guarantee that there was never a warrant approved, and he said that he could not do that. And, of course, we all know that regardless of whether or not it was legal, there was some big shit going on during the election already where they were playing dirty. We remember the Russians. The Russians came and hacked our voting system, and then it was, oh, the Russians helped get Trump elected. And then it was, oh, the Russians have been meeting with all the people who are now in Trump's cabinet once they all got elected. But here's the one thing that I remember in particular, and Claire Bernesh had dug up a lot of the evidence and wrote some really good articles on it. The state of Georgia had come back after they had found that their voting systems had been hacked, and they were asking big questions as to why the IP address for the hack that had come into the voting systems in Georgia all traced back, if I'm not mistaken, to the NSA and not to Russia, as they were all claiming. Now, as part of this WikiLeaks Vault 7 dump, I also see some connections. So Trump comes out this weekend and he says, oh, my Trump Tower was hacked and wiretapped by Obama. And, of course, all the mainstream point to Trump and go, you have no proof. You have no proof. Now, first of all, we've already seen mega dumps that have pointed out and pretty much made it a no-brainer for anyone who wouldn't listen to people like Joel 20 years ago going, nothing is secure. It came out way back when, especially when you look at some of the Snowden stuff, and I'm not going to get into my beliefs about Snowden, but I really think there is a big psyop that is going on right now. So, we might believe this, but there's an agenda as to why they are allowing us to know just how significant the spying has been. But when Snowden started making his leaks, we found out way back then, 20 years, they've been watching everything. And I've told you, you have a dossier. You have a threat assessment. They have been bagging and tagging everything. Because someday, just someday, right now, they're probably at that cusp. But up until this point, they haven't had enough people to go scan every living human's dossier to go find, who the people are, who they want to target, or somebody talking about something they shouldn't be. But they do now, with the advent of artificial intelligence and being able to release the machine on our data, they're able to scan, bag, and tag, classify, collate every little bit of data that they've been storing in the cloud or in the big pulsating Jabba the Hutt data center down in, where'd they put it, Utah. They're talking again about this DNA storage. And I remember back a few years ago when they first started discussing that with the ability to store information for 1 billion years or some insane number like that. I started postulating, they'd even said like in a pound or an ounce of DNA back at that time, you would be able to store every single emotion and transaction and word ever uttered and anything ever done in the history of the universe and anything that's ever happened on Earth, butterfly wings flapping, in just a small amount of DNA. And I was like, oh, wouldn't that be convenient for being able to store every surveilled action and reaction on this planet? Well, it looks like eventually that will be the plan, if that is not happening already in some dark lab down a deep dark hallway. But so here we go. So we have Trump announced this weekend that he knows, and he has a Twitter freak out at 3 a.m. that they have been wiretapping him. All the mainstream media, of course, stands up and says, how do you have proof? Oh, the man is crazy. Oh, look, he has connections to Russia again. And bang, Monday morning at 8 a.m., we get this leak called Vault 7 out of WikiLeaks. Julian Assange's organization, he is under the political protection of Ecuador at the moment from the long arm of the law. But I saw something interesting about that as well. So the other day, I guess Ecuador is getting ready for a presidential election themselves. And one of the candidates that has a good chance of winning does not believe in political dissidents living under his umbrella. And so Julian Assange might be out of a refuge at some point here in the not too distant future. Fern and I were postulating how interesting it would be if Assange, sent an email to Snowden and said, hey, Snowden and Putin, mind if I come hang out with you guys? Honestly, guys, I almost think that these two, with targeted assassinations and things that we've seen, if they don't want you to open your mouth, you're not going to be opening your mouth. You're going to end up suicided with your arms duct taped behind your back and a bullet hole behind you and saying you committed suicide. Or off a bridge, he jumped, but his arms and legs were taped. So the fact that these two guys are still out there yapping their heads off. We have someone like Glenn Greenwald, who's living, from everything I've seen, freely in England, publishing all this material that's getting fed to him by some ex-CIA, NSA contractor. Actually was NSA, but did work for the CIA contractor that's sitting over in, an enemy, quote-unquote, enemy country, feeding us data that exposes the vulnerable belly and the lies and manipulation and the spying that our government's been doing on the people. I find it very hard to believe that these guys have not been apprehended or, like I said, suicided, and they are still allowed to sing like canaries. And what's even more interesting about all this, so as they release Vault 7 information yesterday, we find out that all these things that we've talked about on this show over the last few years now, I even went back and I found the episode July 23rd, 2015 of Before the First Cup was titled DARPA Dan, Car Hacking, Memex, and the Internet of Things. Ding! Now, DARPA Dan is part of all this. We watched a 16 minutes clip or two in that show, and I can't play clips right now because Microsoft has forced upgrades as of all last week. There were upgrades on everything, and I'm going to tell you why. See, this was released just in time. But back in 2015, DARPA Dan, when he was still at DARPA, because remember, he has now since moved to Google. He's another DARPA person, then has just slid over in the slippery chair to go help the deep state infiltrate even deeper through commercial and consumer products. But DARPA Dan had discussed how easy it was to hack a car, how insecure the internet is, how insecure all of the car manufacturers are right now. There was a bill introduced by Senator Markey at that time to Congress that had raised a red alarm over these vulnerabilities in cars. I guess many of the automotive manufacturers aren't paying much, if any, attention to the big gaping holes that allow hackers and foreign actors to potentially take control of your vehicle and, I don't know, like Stephen Hastings, and we talked about him that day as well, slam him into a tree as he is writing a damning story exposing the deep state. Yes, that was amazing when that happened. Nobody figured it out. It's mostly, and I think it was a Beamer too, mostly Beamers don't accelerate out of control, especially brand new. But DARPA Dan had really set the stage. 60 Minutes, just like Charlie Rose hosting 60 Minutes that day to introduce IBM's Watson and how IBM Watson is full-on oncologist at 20 cancer hospitals. See, that means agenda. When it comes out on 60 Minutes, which is an American news staple, it means it is the agenda that they're trying to push out. They want to get it into your mind because they're going to use it now to steer you in a different direction. Well, stuff all came out 2 years ago. We've talked about every single one of these things that have been released in Vault 7 on the show. Every single one, and they've all been documented. We've followed them. I backed them all up with stories, so it's not like this is a big surprise. But listen, this weekend with Trump opening his mouth, and then them throwing this on the table and go, look, it's not just Trump who's been getting spied on, it's every single one of us. And they've been doing it through where? Oh, these back doors. with these day zero exploits, these holes that haven't been patched. Remember Hacking Team. We discussed Hacking Team before. Hacking Team was that third-party organization that they discovered. Oh, we did a story from the New York Times maybe 2, possibly 3 years ago, talking about these external hacking companies that were commercialized. They called themselves white-hat hackers, but they really weren't. And they were peddling their wares to governments and law enforcement across the globe. And when Hacking Team themselves got hacked this last year, maybe 2 years ago, it was exposed of the lists of organizations that they had been peddling their wares to, and people were horrified. They were using hackers to find vulnerabilities, and then they were writing software that would exploit those backdoor holes. They weren't informing the manufacturer that their products were buggy, but instead they were selling their exploits to governments and law enforcement agencies to spy on the public. So now let's fast forward to, a week or two ago. We read a story about a product that originally was called Mayhem. I believe it is called now All Secure. And it is the shape-shifting immune system software that we've talked about so many times on the show that was created to compete in a competition in Vegas this past summer, the Cyber Grand Challenge, that was DARPA-sponsored. Mayhem was created by students or engineers from Carnegie Mellon University, one of the big artificial intelligence hubs in this country. And interestingly enough, where Obama gave his speech as he was outgoing about how AI was going to change the future of this country. But we found out last week that they, for the very first time, have turned Mayhem now into commercial enterprises. And we're working with a quote-unquote large, unnamed router manufacturer. And, of course, we all know who that is. Good old Cisco. Cisco owns 99% of the backbone of the Internet. But they had partnered up with All Secure, formerly known as Mayhem, DARPA's shape-shifting immune system that goes out and seeks and destroys zero-day holes. And they had partnered with them to help them, quote-unquote, secure their software. But while this was all happening last week, we start seeing, at least I know I did, but there was a lot of unrest on the web. Seemed that everything was being upgraded or broken, or we couldn't get there. We had a big Amazon outage, Amazon Cloud, not Amazon Store, Amazon Cloud, that a lot of these big organizations run their back ends on. A lot of the big websites and things for load balancing and that. We also had cell phone upgrades for cell phones that don't upgrade, that aren't set to upgrade. I had all kinds of swanky features turned back on after my phone freaked out all day last weekend that haven't been on in 10 years, like, voice recognition. I had Skype doing forced upgrades as well. I'd done a show on forced upgrades. I don't remember if it was Monday or last week, but it was pretty significant. It was like everything broke. We even had our whole back-end database. All this weird shit started happening at the ISP. We tried to call the ISP, and there was like an hour and a half hold time, so it wasn't just us that was having issues. Something big happened last week on the internet. So as I find out that Mayhem was kind of released, that was the genie cork got popped out of that bottle. Skynet was sippy cupped out to see what would happen, and all of a sudden we have all these outages like, we have something that's doing vulnerability testing. Bing, 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 bing. We used to do that on networks. You plug in probes and you start scanning a network to find all of the security holes. So then in the hopes that the network administrator could patch them before some unscrupulous, quote-unquote, foreign actor could get in your back door. Well, I think something like that happened. And I think what has happened now, and the reason why this doesn't matter to them, that this information has been released is that, see, they released the Vault 7 dump after Mayhem was set free on the internet. Mayhem will now automate scanning every day zero hole, and of course they tell you Mayhem is to patch those holes, but guess what? Mayhem was created in the DARPA Grand Challenge. Mayhem was created with funding from the Department of Defense. Shape-shifting immune system for the internet, and DARPA Dan sold it to us. Oh my God, the internet and the Internet of Things is so insecure. We need to have something like this. So if they let us know now, we got backdoors everywhere, wide open, that places like the CIA have been using forever to spy on everyone on the planet. Well, this is setting us up and setting the public up. Once they finally do announce, and they did already, but it hasn't been like on something like 60 Minutes, when they finally announce that Mayhem has been released, people will be on their knees begging Mayhem, now known as All Secure, to come save us from the alphabet agencies, to come scan our gaping security holes on all of our devices, to get into all of our lives and make sure that this ubiquitous spying has ended. But guys, they're all on the same team. It's all the same people. They're playing good cop, bad cop. And they are pitting us against each other. You know, I honestly don't believe that this progression of events was an accident. See, remember, they cannot force us, they discovered, to do things. And the public isn't as receptive to technology as they had hoped. So they got to find ways to weasel technology into our lives and to make us beg for it and want it to be able to keep us safe. Now, let's take a look here. I ran across a story. WikiLeaks just nuked the CIA. CIA negligence sees it's losing control of all of its cyber weapons arsenal, sparking serious proliferation concerns. And, you know, we had also talked about the democratization of all kinds of 21st century tools. Keith Alexander had done a huge interview, again back in 2015 with Wired Magazine, when he was the outgoing NSA chief, and he outlined all of the tools that he had at his command that he created while he was the head of the NSA in regards to cyber patrol. And he enlisted people from every branch of the armed services. Every branch of the armed services has their own cyber patrol that are all working in conjunction and under the umbrella of the NSA. Keith Alexander talked about search and destroy bots and all these backdoors that they could access. And guys, again, this just talks about the CIA. It's all of them. It's all of them. And I'm going to tell you something else. They had talked about in this Vault 7 how they have access to every backdoor of every Windows PC on the planet. Well, I told you guys that 5 years ago, and I'll tell you how I knew that already, because I saw the day it happened, and I will never forget that day. I told you how back in, my techie years, back in the 90s, mid to late 90s, Bill Gates still was thought of as a good guy. Bill Gates was the geek who rose to the top. And he was leading every single one of us to the promised land, or at least we thought. We listened to every word that man said with bated breath, because he was going to outline the way of the future. And Bill Gates was fighting against the federal government because the federal government said, Billy, you have created a monopoly. You're not playing nice with your browser. That Netscape Navigator, they can't compete because you're giving your browser away for free now in your Windows 95 operating system. And because of that, we're going to break you up. And they went through years and years of testimony and litigation. Bill Gates explaining how Windows 95 was integrated into the operating system, and it wasn't just as easy as plucking it out, because the entire operating system was a browser now. And so this went on and on and on. And eventually, they finally settled I remember that day. I remember because I followed the news. I used to clip out all the Bill Gates articles. I used to pin them on my wall. I think I even told you guys every time you'd have a story about Bill, he was shaking hands with some global leader, the leader of some country that maybe the United States hadn't been in there in years because we'd cut off diplomatic ties. But Bill Gates was in there meeting with them, shaking hands, selling them Windows operating systems. So here we had Bill getting his software covertly, the Trojan horse, into every corner of the globe. And eventually, the Justice Department and Microsoft had settled. Of course, Microsoft wasn't broken up. Bill Gates gave an interview, and he stood in front of the camera. It's going to be all right. Don't worry about it, people. As he's looking, smiling with that grin. And I knew what that meant. Microsoft wasn't broken up and allowed to continue, because that very day, I am pretty certain that Bill Gates handed the backdoor keys to the feds and said, you know what, you let me keep my company. I'll share my secret backdoors with you if you only use them for the power of good. See, that's where all the evil began. And not that they weren't doing surveillance and backdoor hacking and stuff in the past before that, but the federal government did not have the sophistication at that time to keep up what was happening with what is happening on the technology front. That was the very beginnings of the partnership. And not really, because you got Bell Labs and some of the other biggies in the past that have partnered with the federal government, a lot of these large engineering organizations. But Microsoft was the first time that I remember seeing a tech company. And tech companies always were bucking the system because they were trying to regulate, they were trying to tamp down on the internet's growth, they were trying to put taxes on things, even way back then, for internet sales and that was just beginning. And we had gotten the government out of computing for a long time, and that was the really first time that they had kind of partnered, even though it was on the QT. But anyway, let me read this story. So, CIA negligence sees it losing control of all cyber weapons arsenals, sparking serious proliferation concerns. Obama's CIA built the most powerful cyber attack arsenal, costing U.S. taxpayers, and of course, yes, we are paying for our own demise, $100 billion, and lost it all to the enemy for free, or so they say. See, I don't think we lost anything to the enemy. I think the enemy is us, and it's called mayhem. CIA illicitly hoarded zero-day attacks, putting at risk industry, government, and even Trump's Twitter account. And those zero-day attacks, I told you, those are the ones that they have been exploiting since Hacking Team, and even before, but Hacking Team was the one that was exploiting them and selling them to governments and law enforcement to exploit us. The Obama administration used their advanced cyber attack arsenal, of course, which they have now, but they didn't before, thanks to good old Keith Alexander, against private citizens. CIA hackers celebrated what they saw as a financial largeness of Obama towards them to make it rain. And, they made it rain. There was money pouring from the sky. Again, it was the second coming of the internet, except security was the next big money maker. CIA went from searching for day zero holes via code analysis to inserting CIA coders into major U.S. tech companies to implement backdoors directly. And yes, just like DARPA, sliding slippery octopus arms into every organization to be able to have a foothold in controlling those who have our data. The CIA also turned smart TVs, iPhones, gaming consoles, and other consumer gadgets into open microphones. How long have we known that? I mean, I stick my phone under my cushion and I sit on it when I am in a room, or just go lock it up in the end bedroom at the end of the hall if you're having a conversation. And those smart TVs, they specifically named Samsung, but you know that there are others. They warned from the very beginning, including Samsung, not to talk around your Samsung TV because the microphones can open. And I'm going to tell you, even back in the 70s, The FBI had the capability of opening up your telephone line, let's call it, your telephone microphone, and I'm talking landline. I mean, yesterday I heard the guy saying it's time to go back to old school technology, but I already can guarantee you 100% because that's the world that I used to work in. You know, we were upgrading all those old phone systems, the SS7 network, and some of my old friends were engineers back from the 70s in those days working on those networks, and it could absolutely be done. They just flip a little switch, I don't know, even maybe hook a little alligator clip on. They would send telephone, quote-unquote telephone repairmen up those poles. At least they looked like telephone repairmen. Remember with that little phone thing hanging off their butt? It was a little dialer. Might even had I think so. They had like a handset connected to it. And some alligator clips, and they'd take them up and test the line. Blink. Somebody's listening in. That was the more covert way, besides having the black van at the end of the street. But I mean, that's been going on forever, but it's ubiquitous now. Everybody's got holes. The majority of the populace has some sort of commercial device that they use on a daily basis, whether it have Windows, whether it have Android operating system, which is owned by Google, and some of the core root code from Android came from where? Oh, it came from DARPA. We discovered that way back when. And then, of course, you have Apple. And Apple has been working with the alphabet agencies for quite a while. And hey, we have Siri. Well, guess what? We found out from the head of DARPA that Siri was one of their creations as well. We saw Paul Joseph Watson. Not that I'm a fan of InfoWars, but I do like Paul Joseph Watson's accent. And we laughed our asses off at this video where he was showing the gaming consoles and some of the intrusive scanning that it was doing, not only with a microphone, but with cameras, showing, I think they were using some sort of HD camera to scan whether or not you had anything in your pockets, and they actually could almost literally see through his pants, and that was the gist of the video. But again, besides disturbing, all of this has been happening for a very long time. Now we know about our smart devices. Of course, the Internet of Things, soon to be the Internet of Everything, is going to be spy apparatus in every corner of your life. You won't be able to think, talk, sleep, eat, or go to the bathroom without them knowing what you are doing. And now as they then roll this 21st Century Cures Act, this 21st century medicine into our lives, so we're going to be depending upon our Fitbits, our little nanobots, our wearable tattoos that'll be able to bag, tag, and track our biostatistics, all in the name of keeping you safe, Johnny, feeding it back to your doctor, and who else knows who's on the other end of that database. You know, they're going to be able to keep very, very close tabs on each and every one of us. Jointly developed by the CIA and the MI5, malware infests the Samsung smart TVs to turn them into convert microphones. CIA turned all internet-enabled consumer devices in the world into listening devices. CIA has also turned every Microsoft PC in the world into spyware. And they can activate backdoors on demand, including via Windows Update. And we had found back in that 2015 article out of New York Times looking at these backdoors that not only could they feed us exploits over Windows Update, but they could over Flash updates as well. That was one of the ways that hacking team was getting spyware onto our machines, was with the update service with some of the big manufacturers. Skype voice conversations are converted into text in real time, scanned for content of interest, and then stored in the CIA spy cloud. That CIA spy cloud, of course, we've talked about. Who's hosting that? Oh, good old Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Jeff Bezos of Amazon built the CIA cloud. It's a parallel cloud to the Amazon cloud. And we also discovered that Microsoft just had some nice new update for their translation software that is running on their backdoor deep learning AI. And yes, it is allowed to translate, and yes, it is allowed to scan all of your information in real time. And we had even postulated it was for spying purposes. Well, ding, there we go. So they outlined here's some of the big boy players, and I could even add some more to this: Microsoft, Apple, Cisco, and Google, and I'm going to add Amazon as well. And there's probably a whole bunch more, but and Toyota to that too. We have outlined and done shows about every single one of these guys and their connections to the federal government and how they are all colluding now to open the back door. They did even with the phone companies before this. We had back in the early 2000s, there were lawsuits fighting for our protection for privacy when the AT&Ts of the world were handing over our records to the alphabet agencies. People were crying foul, and they said, hey, we're going to give them protections if it's all in the name of national security, and we need to check on you. They can give us these, otherwise we're going to come after these large conglomerates. And, of course, they all just shook hands and went out and had a couple cocktails at a strip joint, probably, to cement the deal. But they covered their asses. So none of these guys now can get sued for breach of any type of contract or for violating any type of constitutional right for your privacy. Because, again, it's all in the name of keeping you safe. So I've tried to outline here the progression of events as to how this all happened. Mayhem was now released. So since Mayhem can scan the entire back end of the internet and can identify any of these quote-unquote vulnerabilities that are already out there, we don't even need organizations like Hacking Team anymore who was doing it manually with actual hackers. Now we can send Skynet, quote-unquote Skynet, out to find them and to exploit them. We could tell everyone that Skynet is patching them, but in the meantime, Skynet could be monitoring them and funneling your information with a big fat artificial intelligence brain back to the cloud. So out of Anti-Media, WikiLeaks has published what it claims is the largest ever release of confidential documents on the CIA. It includes more than 8,000 documents as part of Vault 7, a series of leaks on the agency, which have allegedly emerged from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley and can be seen in an org chart that is embedded in this article, and I will link to it. Total of 8,761 documents have been published as part of a Year Zero, the first in a series of leaks the whistleblower organization has dubbed Vault 7. WikiLeaks has said that Year Zero revealed details of the CIA's global covert hacking program, including quote-unquote weaponized exploits used against company products, including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, Microsoft Windows, and yes, even Samsung's TV. WikiLeaks tweeted the leak, which it claims came from a network inside of the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley, Virginia. But perhaps what is the most notable is a purported emergence of another Snowden-esque whistleblower, the source of the information, who told WikiLeaks in a statement that they wish to initiate a public debate about security, creation, use, proliferation, and the democratic control of cyber weapons. Wink. Again, let's make this all democratic and let everybody have hacking tools just like they do CRISPR. Policy questions that should be debated in public include whether the CIA's hacking capabilities exceeded its mandated powers and the problem of public oversight of the agency. In the FAQ section of the release, it provides further details on the extent of the leak, which was obtained recently and covers through 2016. The time period covered in the latest leak is between 2013 and 2016, according to the CIA timestamps on the documents themselves. WikiLeaks has also asserted that it has not mined the entire leak, and it has only verified it, asking that journalists and activists do the legwork. Guys, the timing on this was very suspect to me. The fact that Trump opened his mouth the weekend before this revelation. There really isn't a revelation. It just kind of puts it all in one place. But like I said, all this stuff has been kind of sippy cupped out in news over the last few years. So people who have listened to this show actually knew about much of this stuff, if not all of it. If you've listened very carefully, we should do a test. I'm going to test you guys. We'll give out Cupid dolls. I mean, this wasn't a surprise to any of us. But the fact that now they have released Mayhem, and Mayhem is going to be the savior of the Internet of Things, is what is interesting about this. Mayhem was released just last week. Now, there was another piece of software that DARPA Dan had talked about, and that was Memex. Memex was developed under DARPA, but is very potentially now part of something that they have kind of handed over to Google, since DARPA Dan was the guy that was in charge of this, and they had touted it at the time as a search engine that puts Google search to shame because it indexed the entire dark web. And remember, the dark web is where those scary people live. Those people they tried to warn you about. Those hackers and child traffickers and drug dealers that live out on the web. Oh, the seedy internet. But guys, this gives them the ability to be able to bag tag and track you and every single connection you have to anybody you've ever interacted with on the web, here and in the underweb, and put it into one really nice big graphic on a big Surface computer where you can zoom in, zoop, 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 just like on your cell phone where you can use the finger pinch to zoom, and you can get the dossier, ding, 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 on every single person that is connected to that cloud of connections. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, these tools have proliferated now. I was also reading something about the Police Department in New York City, NYPD, who of course has a branch over in Israel, over in Jerusalem. They have their little outlet there, and they've been working on their own cyber patrol. Microsoft came in there way back when and set up one of their big, impressive 21st century cyber patrol centers. The other one is over in Seattle, Washington. We've watched that video quite a number of times about the Microsoft Cyber Patrol Center and how wonderful it is, because they would be partnering with law enforcement across the globe, again, to track child traffickers and online crime that could be hacking Nana's bank account. Oh, guys, it's all come together now. They're all working on AI. They've all given the backdoor keys over to the alphabet agencies. They've all been pulled into the fold and promised complete and utter protection. We are going to work together. We're actually going to give you funding to help us develop these new 21st century technologies, of course, because the Department of Defense has always been behind in technology, and we need your help now, technical sector, to be able to root out the evil and the fake news on the internet. All right, so let's move a little bit beyond this now. We're going to start looking at some of the things that they have been saying over the last few weeks about artificial intelligence here. They are really setting this up, and now the cat is totally out of the bag. MIT Technology Review, AI is the new black. Artificial intelligence no longer exists just in the realm of science fiction. Oh, no. Enterprise AI is coming of age, and cognitive computing, i.e. IBM Watson, is now actively improving business processes and strategies. On February 9, 2017, two technology market leaders made an announcement, and that would be SAP, which does a lot of back-end reporting for businesses, enterprise reporting products, and NVIDIA. And NVIDIA used to make video cards, but we've read about NVIDIA for some of these high-end AI applications. NVIDIA's always had super fast processors, and that's for the GPUs, the robot googly eyes, as we call them. But they were always making high-end video cards for 3D systems, when it came to doing like DirectX or OpenGL, that type of stuff, to be able to do not only gaming, but high-end engineering. When you were doing like super detailed AutoCAD and that, you needed to have a super duper video card in order to do that. I used to have one of those systems back in my engineering days. And I mean, you were talking like $1,000 video card, which was insane. But those processors on those video cards became so powerful that they started spinning them out now to actually run some AI systems. And NVIDIA pulled way ahead now, and they are kicking ass in artificial intelligence and giving AI some additional senses. NVIDIA announced that demand for artificial intelligence applications was driving demands for its graphic platform as well. And in the face of it all, these announcements were business as usual, routine sound bites that proliferate the tech news landscape. But if you look a bit deeper, you will realize that this day marked a profound shift. Ding, ding, ding. How many of these profound shifts are happening right now? Because I'm telling you, something happened a week ago. We are moving to the next phase of whatever that is in this dystopia that is rolling out into our future. But yes, if you look a bit deeper and you realize that this day marked a profound shift in both the way businesses use technology and the implications for the rest of us. For decades, developing a computer that can think has been the holy grail of technology, and while we have made tremendous progress in our ability to process vast amounts of data, yes, including all that data they've been spying on and collecting, because we're all in bed with the alphabet agencies, the thinking part has remained more elusive. We are still stuck between two diametrically opposed visions of AI. On one side, it's the smart but deeply dystopian words of HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey. I'm sorry, but I can't do that, Dave. And on the other, it is a simpler world of devices like Alexa, yes, from good old Jeff Bezos' Amazon, or Siri, yes, created by DARPA but on Apple iPhones, playing songs for us. Until now, that is. Enterprise AI is finally coming of age. Oh, how convenient it was right at this very moment when all this other shit is happening and cognitive computing is finding its way into real products that companies can use, of course, to improve its business processes. Simply speaking, cognitive computing refers to self-learning systems that mimic the way the human brain works. This evolution has been a long time in coming, but once we had to compute the capacity, thanks to the emergence of the cloud, to handle large volumes of data cost effectively, but it was only a matter of time before self-learning algorithms would begin to mature. And these data mining enabled techniques utilizing predictive analysis and pattern recognition to power automated systems that learn from new and changing data environments, and they're able to solve problems without human intervention. And we've read about a few of those recently. There's a bunch that Google has released, and they've been able to come to their own conclusions. They've been able to translate between two languages that they didn't even know. The self-learning AI, shape-shifting, just like Mayhem, shape-shifting immune system of the internet that requires no human intervention to find, search, destroy, patch, wink, is a part of all of this. Add to those systems then the ability to express commands in a normal spoken language, because robots can talk to us now. They can see, they can hear, they can taste, they can smell. And the interaction between a machine and a human becomes fairly seamless. Say hello to HAL 2.0. Ding, 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 ding. Yes, guys, the robots are going to take off our jobs, and the robots are going to be scanning our back end, and the robots are going to be identifying and potentially destroying those of us who are threatening to the machine. I'm really worried about this. You know, as we have Tommy Insel working for Google's Verily, It was talked about using just our voice patterns that we use all the time. You know, the CIA has open microphones everywhere, so even if you're not like me up front doing a radio show 5 days a week with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of my voice sample out there public on the internet, they could still scan every single one of us to see whether or not we have quote unquote mental issues on a spectrum that we might need to be treated for as they redefine under the guise of the 21st Century Cures Act, I can't even say it, neurological surveillance section as to who may be a danger to themselves or others. Well, don't worry about it, because we have lawyers who are now being run by IBM Watson. We have Wall Street bond traders. We had, I don't know, they said there were hundreds on the floor, 600 I believe, and now they're down to 2 for doing trading. We have AI doctors and Dr. Smartphone. We have accountants and H&R Block partnering with Watson as well. Well, JP Morgan software does in seconds what it used to take lawyers 360,000 hours to do. What? Oh, yes. It is a program called Coin. How convenient it's called Coin for JP Morgan. At JP Morgan Chase, a learning machine is parsing financial deals that once kept legal teams busy for thousands of hours. The program called Coin for Contract Intelligence does the mind-numbing job of interpreting commercial loan agreements that, and by the way, I used to do commercial loans way back when I first got out of college. And they were very complicated. Does a mind-numbing job of interpreting commercial loan agreements that, until the project went online in June of 2015, consumed 360,000 hours of work each year by lawyers and loan officers. The software reviews documents in seconds and is less prone to errors, as well as, of course, never ask for a vacation, and I'll add to that a pension or sick time or raises or anything else. And while the financial industry has long touted its technological innovations, a new era of automation is now in overdrive as cheap computing power converges with fears of losing customers to startups. Made possible by investments in machine learning and a new private cloud network, wink, Coin is just the beginning for the biggest U.S. bank. The firm recently set up technology hubs for teams specializing in big data, robotics, and cloud infrastructure to find new sources of revenue while reducing expenses and risks. And expenses would include employees. Now, let's add insult to injury. So as we have all this going on, we have all of our privacy out a window. Of course, they have dossiers on every single one of us and every bit of dirt, anything you've ever searched on the internet, every conversation you've ever had, whether it be online, on your cell phone, or in front of your TV, bagged and tagged. And they will be diagnosing mental illness on a spectrum from your voice patterns at some point in the near future if Tommy Insel and Google have their way. Well, don't get afraid now, but out of MIT Technology Review, March 6th, 2017, 2 days ago, how to upgrade judges with machine learning. Yes, I am talking judges like sitting at a podium deciding whether or not you need to be incarcerated, judges. Oh, yes. Remember, AI and machine learning is not swayed by their inferior human emotions. So AI would make good judges, they say. How to upgrade judges with machine learning. Software that helps judges decide whether to jail a defendant while they await trial could cut crime and reduce racial disparities among prisoners. Yes, because AI apparently is colorblind. Well, when should a criminal defendant be required to await trial in jail rather than at home? software could significantly improve a judge's ability to make that call, reducing crime or the number of people stuck waiting in jail. A new study from the National Bureau of Economic Research, economists and computer scientists trained an algorithm to predict whether a defendant was a flight risk just by looking at their rep sheets and court records using data from hundreds of thousands of cases in New York City. Ding, oh yay, New York wins again. While tested on over 100,000 more cases that it hadn't seen before, this algorithm is now proved better at predicting what defendants will do after their release than the judges. John Kleinberg, a computer science professor at Cornell University involved in the research, says that one goal of the project was to show policymakers that the potential benefit to society of using machine learning in the criminal justice system is going to be good for them. This shows how machine learning can help even in contexts where there are considerable people with human expertise, and it is being brought to bear, and it could help get around those pesky emotions. So put on a seatbelt, because at some point we are going to have AI judges judging us, deciding with no emotion, so it can't be skewed. Remember, they have already raised the red flag about how completely skewed our justice system is because it looks at the color of your skin. Well, they've now set the stage for AI moving right into that space. And last but not least, scientists want to build a super fast, self-replicating computer that, quote, grows as it computes, unquote. March 4th, 2017, out of ScienceAlert.com, scientists say that it is possible to build a new type of self-replicating computer that replaces silicon chips with processors made from DNA molecules. Ding! And it would be faster than any other form of computer ever proposed, including quantum computers, which, of course, IBM just announced their quantum computer that they are going to be releasing here in the not too distant future. All right, guys, we are going to pick up here tomorrow. Have an